Okay, for this tutorial, we're actually going to create a comet. And so we'll have sort of flaming stuff flying off of this sphere right here. This scene is actually on the server for you. It's called Comet 1, and it's going to be in the basics tutorial project. So that's where you can find that scene. There's also some textures, and I've gone ahead and reloaded them on this, so they're already assigned. You just have to reload them. So this will be the scene that you start out with. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this grid just to make everything easier to see. So we're going to use our circle here, our little sphere here. If I play this, you can see we've got some animation happening. And we're going to use this for our comet. So I'm going to go ahead and back up to the beginning. And I'm going to select this comet right here. And I'm going to go up to make sure that we're in the dynamics thing here. Go to Particles, Emit from Object. And I'm going to go ahead and reset this to the default. I'm going to actually change the emitter type to directional for this one. So instead of omni, we're going to have directional. I'm going to come down. Let's see. That's something that I can probably change later. But we want to make sure that it's a directional emitter. Going to go ahead and hit create. And we can see now what's happening is we've just got a big streak of particles coming out of our sphere here. So then we're going to come down here in the attribute editor, because right now we have our emitter selected right down here. And here where it says direction X, we're going to change it. We're going to make sure that it says that. So if you have anything else, if you have a 1 in the Y or the Z, you want to take that out and set it to 0 and make sure that the direction is set to 1 in X. The other thing that we're going to do is here where it says spread, we're going to change that to 1. So instead of having just that solid streak of particles that comes out, it's going to start to spread out a little bit like that. All right, so then we're going to change the rate as well. Our rate, if it's not already set there, go ahead and make sure that it's set to 100, not 10. It's going to be 100. So that's going to be our rate. So that's what we have so far. Just a little bit of this sphere going around this circle and throwing out some particles. So now what we're going to do is use some expressions to start to change the look of these particles, because this trail is way too long. It's also solid gray, not very interesting. So what we'll do is we'll select our particles. I'm going to go into the attribute editor under particle shape. And here where it says lifespan attributes, we're going to change the lifespan mode to lifespan PP only. So that's going to be our per particle thing that we're going to set up. And then we're going to come down to our per particle array. And where it says lifespan PP here, I'm going to right click and go to create expression. And then we're going to type this expression in here. So particle, capital S, rest of the word shape, 1, so it's particle shape 1, period, lifespan, per particle, and then we're going to put in an equals, and then RAND, so it's going to be a randomizing thing. Going to open some parentheses, 1, 2, and then we'll close up our parentheses and put in our semicolon. So what we're telling Maya to do is take these particles, and with regard to their lifespan, because the default is for them to live forever, and that's why it kept going on so long. We're going to take the lifespan, and between 1 and 2, we're just going to randomize between 1 and 2 how the particles die off on a per particle basis. So let me go ahead and create that. And let's see what that looks like. So now we have a lot shorter comet now, and it's got sort of like the fuzzy end on the back. That's going to be what we need. So that's going to be a lot better for the tail of our comet. And the other thing that we can do to make it look even more interesting, actually, is instead of having it be random, I'm going to go to my creation expression thing here again. And where instead of random, if you use Gaussian, because random is just random, it picks random numbers. But Gaussian will sort of take a bell curve and pick values off of that bell curve. So let's change that to that and see what happens. So I'm going to change it from RAND to GAUSS. Click Edit. And let's see what our comet tail looks like now. So it's a little bit longer, and we've got a little more sort of stuff coming out the back. That's even better than just randomizing. So let's go ahead and stick with that. So that's sort of the movement of the particles for our comet tail. Now there's lots of work still to be done, but just in terms of the lifespan of the particles, we've got that settled. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set up the color, but instead of using an expression, we're going to use a similar, it's going to be a per particle attribute, but we're going to use a ramp instead of an expression to create the color. So this is another cool way that you can use this per particle array for a lot of different things. So I'm going to click color, and it's going to be a per particle attribute. So I'll say add attribute, and now we have RGB PP. Then I'm going to right click there and go down to create ramp options. And then I'm going to use the particle's age for the input V. And what that means is we're going to have this ramp that goes from one color to another. And the way that the particles are going to change colors through that ramp is by how old the particles are. So they'll change color over time. And that's going to get the effect of how it's sort of bright yellow, and then it burns sort of to an orange, and then it goes out to black. Because that's the effect that we're going to try to get here. So we're going to make sure that that's set to particle's age. And then I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to right click on our array mapper right here and go to edit ramp. And that way we can start to mess with our ramp here. So what we'll have is, instead of having this sort of, you know, what we have here, we're going to start with, let's see, I'm not sure if we want to go starting from white here or down here, but we're just going to try it and just see what happens. So let's start with white at the top. And then down here is going to be black. And then let's say we'll add a couple more spots in here. This one, we'll make this a yellow. This one we can make it more of an orangey color. Turn up some saturation a little bit there. And then this one, we can go to more of a gray, like a dark gray. And that's the kind of thing that we want. Now, we might want to sort of push this up a little closer. So that's the kind of ramp that we're probably looking for. Now, we'll have to see later on if we've got this in the right order. It's easy to fix if we don't. But let's just see what happens. So what I can do now is I can play this. And yeah, see how you've got all the white in the back and then there's black up at the front? Let's just take these and just turn them around. Just push this up to here. And then I'm not sure if I like that orange very much. I'm gonna make it a little more red. A little brighter. And now, that's a lot better. Do you see how it's sort of brighter at the front, and then it fades back to little gray particles at the back? So that's what we're looking for in terms of color. So that's our color ramp created. The other thing that we want to do is do a similar thing for the opacity, because we kind of want the particles to start to fade out as they die as well. So we're going to take our particles, and we're going to click opacity right here in the middle. We're under add dynamic attributes. We'll click opacity. It's going to be a per particle attribute. So I'll click add attribute there. And then we're going to make a ramp for that as well. We've got Opacity PP added right here. So I'm going to right click, go down to Create Ramp Options. And again, we want to make sure that it's the particle's age that's going to affect the input V. That's sort of the direction that the ramp is going to go. And say OK. And then we'll edit our ramp just the same way as we did before. And then what we're going to have here is we're just going to take this out, and we just have white at the top and black at the bottom. And what that's going to do is it's going to tell Maya anywhere where it's white, it's going to be fully opaque. And as it ages, it's going to start to fade, and it'll be completely disappeared by the time it's ready to die. So that's going to be our ramp right there. So let's see what that looks like right now. So yeah, you can see that they're starting to fade out, and it looks more like these little sparks are burning out as they get farther away from the comet. So that's the kind of thing that we wanted to do with our expressions on the color right there. So the other thing that we can do to make this look even more interesting is let's go back to our particles and let's change the current render type, and let's change it to clouds. And now it looks even more sort of cool, like a comet, like smoke or fire or stuff coming off the back. And you can change this too. You can experiment with other types of particles. One thing to keep in mind is that these clouds, you're going to have to use the software renderer to render it. If you wanted to use those points, you were going to have to use the hardware renderer. So different renderers for different types of particles. But so that's our clouds. The other thing is that we've got these particles set up, but if you're going to use the software renderer, we're going to have to use a different shader. And I'll get to that in just a few minutes of how we're going to set that up later on. But we've got these colors set up now, so we'll start from there. So the other thing that we want to try to do is maybe do some work on the radius of the particles, because these are pretty big. So we're going to use the radius attribute so that we can make it look more like the tail is dissipating. So we don't actually have a radius attribute yet, so we're going to have to click General right here under the Per Particle Array. Make sure that we click Particles, go down. This list is in alphabetical order, so if it's hard to find things, just keep that in mind. Radius PP is what we're going to use. We're going to say OK to that. And then we're going to use a ramp for this as well. We've got our Radius PP. We're going to create another ramp. Ramp Options. And we're going to start, we're going to make sure that it's a particle's age, just like everything else. And then when we start to edit this, we're going to really only need 2 of these. We're going to change this color, and we're going to go down here where it says value and just change that to 0.373. So it's sort of a darker gray. And that's where it's going to start. And then we're going to end it with white. And then what that will sort of make it do is it'll start as sort of smaller particles, and as they age and they start to burn out and fade out and dissipate out, they'll get bigger, probably. Let's see what that looks like. So yeah, you can see the particles start to grow over time. I'll go ahead and unselect them so you can see it better. Alright, so we've kind of got our particles acting like we want. Looks pretty cool so far. So then the next thing that we kind of want to do is let's change some things about this. Because right now, if we render this, it looks cool right here, but if we render, it's still just this weird default particle cloud shader. That's not what we want. So what I've done is I've actually gone ahead and started a shader for us. And that's going to be on the server. So what you can do is just import that in. Just go File, Import. And then you're just going to look for the project files. And it's going to be in the Scenes folder. And you're going to import the one called Comet Shader. That's the shader that you're going to use. Just import that scene. And now if you look in the hypershade, you can see that you've got this new comet shader now. So we haven't done a lot with it yet, but it's there. We're going to assign this shader to our particles. So, and right now we haven't really set up anything on it yet. So it's still doing the same default blueness that we don't really like. But I'm going to go ahead and keep it selected. And what I'll do is just take the ramps that we already created and just transfer them to this new shader. So the way that we can do that, we're going to use the ramps that we created for our particles when we're just working with it before, and we're going to actually drop them into this new shader. So we don't have to really redo hardly anything. So I'm going to go ahead and actually select our particles. And then I'm going to click this button here where it says Input and Output Connections. And that's going to show all of our ramps and everything right here in the hypershade. So if I can zoom in a little bit on there, you can see, whoops. All right, so it's having a little bit of an issue with my mouse, but it's all fixed. And I'm going to show you what to do about the color on these particles. So you're going to take the color ramp, middle mouse drag it over and drop it on life color. Then you're going to do the same thing, select your comet shader with your opacity ramp, drop it down onto life transparency, make sure your middle mouse drag it over. Now with this, you are going to have to go in with your life transparency, and you're going to have to edit this so that it is reversed. So you just have to reverse that. And let's see what we have so far. So now we have it, so it's just a little bit of a different pattern here, but we still have the brightness at the beginning, fading out to dark. And let's see what it looks like rendered. So that's a lot more like what we're going to want for our comet. So now there's a few other things that we're going to change on our shader. We're going to add a few more ramps in. So I'm going to go ahead and select my comet shader again. And we're going to come down here where it says Life Incandescence and click this little box. We're going to use another ramp for that. And what we'll do for this is we are going to make it a red to black ramp. So it's going to sort of start to glow red a little and then fade to black. So this red is going to be fine. We'll get rid of this, make this black, and then we're going to change the position of this right here. We're going to change that to 0.4, so it's a lot shorter, sort of red and black ramp like this. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll render this again the original way so we can sort of compare what we've done here. So I'm going to just save that right there. And now, well, actually that's with the new setting, so it can't really compare very well. But you can sort of see a little bit more of a reddish thing happening there as it fades out. And then we're also going to want to add some glow as well. So we'll come back into the hypershade, get our shader, and then where it says the glow intensity here, we're going to put another ramp in for that. And this ramp is going to have the black. We're going to have white and black. So this will be our black. And we're going to position that at 0.21. And then the white is we'll make this white. And we're actually going to make this even brighter. So right now we have the value set to 1. But if we make this higher, like 1.5, that's going to make it more of a glowy kind of a white. So when you're talking about this value in any kind of color thing that we're working with, you're not limited to between 0 for black and white for 1. So you can go all the way up past that and make that color even brighter and brighter. And that's going to be really useful for a lot of things, especially in dynamics. But that's going to be our ramp right there. And let's see what that looks like. Go ahead, just in case we need to, and start to replay this a little bit farther. And now we're starting to get a really nice glow in the front here, and then it fades back. So that's going to be a really nice comet effect right there. We're going to do a couple things with the shader just in terms of adjusting some settings. So where it says density right here, we're going to actually make that 0.79, so it's not quite as dense as it was before. So we'll go ahead and see what that looks like. See, it's starting to just tiny bit sort of fade out a little. This blob map that we're going to have here, blob map, and change this value to 0.5. And that's going to sort of dim down everything a little bit, I believe. So let's see what that looks like. These are all under the transparency settings. So that's just giving it just a little bit more, of the orange, a little less gray. This roundness we're going to change to 0.107, and that might take care of all the sort of round globule kind of looking parts. Smooth it out a little bit. And it looks like, yeah, that's exactly what it's done there. And then we're going to leave the translucency right there where it is. So let's go ahead and I'm going to play this again so we can see it at a little different angle. We'll get it around so you can sort of see it from the other side. Yeah. So that's starting to look really nice. We have just one more thing to change, and that's just going to be our conserve setting. And that's just going to make it just a little, just refine it just a little bit more. So we're going to select the particles themselves, and we're going to look for where it says general control attributes. That's way up here at the top. And this conserve, let's go ahead and save this right now so we can kind of compare. If we take this conserve and change it to 0.95, then we'll play this again. And you can start to see, you can even see here, it's changed the movement quite a lot. It's made it a little more narrow, so it's not quite so sort of branching out, and a lot more comet-like. I think it just sort of reels in the movement just a little bit. Yeah. So we'll let it play all the way up to where it was, and then we'll render again. And that is our comet. It's a pretty nice comet that we've created just out of particles. And we use different types of particles and a lot of ramps, a lot of expressions. And so what you'll do now at this point is render. You're going to do a rendered sequence on this because you can't really tell what's happening with cloud particle unless you render it. So you're going to render about 200 frames or more, however, at least 200 frames. And that's what you're going to turn in for this tutorial. Thanks. Bye.